The latest anime licensed platformer for the Mega Drive comes courtesy of DecapAttack. In fact, this is the first game that the telecommunications company actually published for the system. Its previous appearance, Whip Rush, was published by Sega itself. In Magical Hat, you play as Hat, who has apparently fallen into devildom and has to defeat the evil king. As you can see, it's a platformer featuring some pretty decent graphics and multiple ways to attack each enemy. Hat can hop on his enemies, punch them, or if he collects Robogu, the little white egg-shaped character, he can throw his friend at distant enemies. Having Robogu on his back also allows Hat to take more than one hit. But that's a bit of a problem in this kind of physics-based platformer. To say Hat's a bit skatey is an understatement. You need to get up ahead of steam in order to make longer jumps, and Hat isn't always able to stop on a dime. Considering that enemies can appear without much warning, even out of item boxes, this game can get really frustrating really quick. The various potions that can be found alleviate the problem somewhat, though. They can do everything from clearing a screen of enemies to making Hat invincible for a limited amount of time. And the level design is pretty varied as well. While a lot of levels have you searching around a fairly open world to find a particular item before you can leave, even if you've already defeated the boss of the stage, some are forced scrolling, some are more vertical than others, and some have Hats swimming around underwater. This game was pretty timely, all things considered. As an anime series, Magical Hat only ran for about 16 months, from 1989 to 1990. The Mega Drive game came out only a few months after the series was over. If Magical Hat looks a bit familiar, well, it should. DecapAttack got a lot of mileage out of this concept. It first appeared on the Famicom as Kakefu-kun no Jump Tengoku, otherwise known as Kid Cool in the West. You see a lot of the same elements here, the springy flagpoles used to launch Kid Cool, the momentum-based platforming, and the little object that can be found and thrown. All in all, though, this was not a great game. The second time around, the game appeared on the Sega Master System as Psycho Fox. Here, players still couldn't scroll backwards, making some larger jumps tough to do if you'd move the screen too far forward. This version did, however, introduce the ability to punch enemies along with throwing projectiles, and also gave players the option of morphing into different animals, which resulted in slightly different gameplay. Psycho Fox is steeped in Japanese visuals and references, so it's kind of ironic that the game was never actually released in Japan. The Master System was all but done there by the time it came out anyway. For the launch of Psycho Fox in Brazil, Tectoy inserted a cartoon frog named Sapo Zule as a replacement for Psycho Fox, as well as reworking some of the other character graphics. Tectoy released a few different Sapo Zule reskins for the Master System over the years. Sapo Zule was a popular character in Brazil, a frog suffering from major foot odor. Victo Kai basically released the same game 3 years in a row, each time refining it a bit more. 4 years in a row, actually, when you count the US release of Magical Hat and the further revisions made to the formula. As with any game based on Japanese manga and anime, either the publisher acquires the rights to the material in each new country of release, or the game gets remastered. Of course, in Magical Hat's case, it was the latter. Magical Hat eventually came to the US and other territories as DecapAttack, and honestly, the transformation is so complete it's almost hard to tell the games have the same origin. The graphics and sound have been completely overhauled, to the point that DecapAttack not only contains new music, but uses an entirely different audio engine than Magical Hat. DecapAttack is all about the puns. The new star of the game is Chuck D. Head because, he throws his head. He's out to help Professor Frankenstein take down the evil Max Decap, who's trying to invade the world of the living. DecapAttack obviously shares the same variety as Magical Hat, right down to the Amidakuji bonus levels, where you place a series of chucks on various paths and see where they finish as the screen scrolls up. The presentation isn't the only thing that changed during the transformation, though. You'll notice that, unlike Hat, Chuck actually has a life bar. A life bar that can be extended if you find more heart icons hidden in each level. And the enemies hiding in some of those item statues actually give Chuck a bit of grace period before they attack. Oddly enough, though, some of the levels have been reworked to compensate for this more forgiving setup. Things like this spring-loaded obstacle at the end of the forced scrolling totem pole level. In Hat, this obstacle just isn't there. Overall, I'd actually say DecapAttack is the slightly more difficult game. Magical Hat can be overwhelming at first, but once you get the physics down, the game itself isn't unfairly difficult. DecapAttack, on the other hand, takes a bit longer to master. DecapAttack got a fairly large push by Sega of America, featured in 2-page ad spreads in major video game magazines in 1991. In the UK, the game was pushed hard as well. Over there, Chuck, Max, and Professor Frankenstein were featured in a relatively long-running comic book series. Magical Hat was also released as DecapAttack in Brazil and South Korea. I was never a huge fan of DecapAttack back in the day, mostly because I just didn't have the patience to get very good at it. The finicky physics and the reliance on finding a specific doodad to exit a lot of the levels never sat very well with me. Playing it all these years later, though, I kind of have an appreciation for it. It's become one of the key titles in the history of the Genesis.